Hey, it's Nikki. David and I teamed up with our friend Steve Perkins from Greenhouse for a special series called Roots Up. We think you're going to love this. Roots first, growth follows, so Steve says, and I believe that too. As leaders, we often focus on surface results but overlook those foundational habits or sharpening those. And this Roots Up methodology emphasizes starting with the right foundational practices and taking a look at ours and optimizing those and then building. And I think it's a regular effort to revisit. So let's sharpen our personal habits and systems for betterment with Steve. I sat down with him to capture the why behind Roots Up, and we captured a high-level overview of all of the foundational efforts or habits in his system of Roots Up. And I think it's important for all of us to do a reflection on those. I think there'll be some that you are like, oh, that speaks to me, and we'll have an episode for that. Go ahead and take a listen. I think there's a lot in this initial high-level episode and so many more episodes to come.
We got to get the right roots planted so that the results come naturally, because what you have is you have great people who already have innate talents and strengths and abilities and passions. It's just that you're not tapping into those.
Hey, it's Nikki Llewellyn Gregory, and you're on Gut Plus Science. You're in for a fast-paced, storytelling, action item-rich leadership growth experience. I hope you make this podcast a habit. I consider it a leadership mentoring tool. Learning together makes us better together, and that is how we change the world around us. Let's get to it. Hey, it's Nikki, and I have some news to share today. I am introducing a new partner to Gut Plus Science, Steve Perkins, the founder of Greenhouse Coaching. My husband, David, and I met Steve and immediately felt like he was going to be an inner circle friend, a professional ally. We weren't really sure, but there was something big there. David and I have a way of being and a podcast called Addicted to Betterment to help us stay accountable to that model and to share what we do and learn on our journey to be our best and just be abundant in our sharing. Steve, that is his pursuit too. He is steps ahead of us with his company Greenhouse. He's built out this full coaching program and platform and tools, all the things to help people live out their best life in all the areas. I love to refer to it as this life wheel approach, like this full life, all the things. And that is what they do at Greenhouse Coaching. I am so excited about this partnership and how we get to dive in more and really break all of this down into things that leaders can take and advance particularly. And then all of us, anybody, whatever level you are on, being able to take these things and be able to advance to live out your best life. So today's episode is going to lay the foundation for our partnership and what is coming with Steve and Greenhouse Coaching's content that is going to be on Gut Plus Science, but we'll also be sprinkling in some things that are coming for Addicted to Betterment as well. We're breaking down the Roots Up approach. That is their methodology. Oh, I can't wait to dig in. And Steve, welcome. I think I want to start with this way of being for you and your team. You live by this, grow the life you want. What is that? What does that mean to you all?
Well, we do say it all the time, and it's kind of funny but fun because for me, I feel like my whole life there's been this weird tension in the background of feeling like, especially work and life, like they're pitted against each other, and you got to choose one or the other. You know, either you're going to crush it at work, and then your other personal life areas suffer, or vice versa. And I just really believe, like you said, with the life wheel, we can have growth and fulfillment in all the areas. And I actually want my work life to facilitate the life that I want, not the other way around. But I think what a lot of us grew up either learning or seeing was, no, you actually have to sacrifice what you want in life for the sake of the job. And I think what's exciting now is we're entering this new era of work where it's being redefined. And I think we can renegotiate that whole arrangement. So it really comes out of that idea that work should facilitate the life you want, but also when people are fulfilled and happy and have meaningful work, they do their best work. And so organizations achieve the best results when people feel like they like showing up to work. And so it's this thing of, all right, so let's focus on growing the life that you want, because without being proactive like that, things just happen accidentally.
Yeah, that's yes. You said so much there. The first thing that I want to touch on is I love the word integration versus balance. I'm so curious for you because you said something that made me think that like the fighting against each other or whatever. And it's like, it's not like these equal parts thing, right? It's like this pursuit of constantly working to be the very best. How do you think about, integration versus balance or whatever comes up for you there?
No, I'm glad you brought that up because I do think it's a heady term that I actually, I don't like the way it's used a lot on LinkedIn or in, the recent white papers and podcasts. For me, it actually, like, let's get more practical about it. So when I was in the corporate, Fortune 100 world, I was a slave to my calendar. And so anyone listening in this world knows you got back-to-back meetings all through the day. Now we're supposed to achieve these big goals, but you never actually have time to work on them. So just back-to-back meetings, trying to get through like hundreds of emails a day. And my whole life then is actually, like when you take a step back and think about it, which I did, my whole life is built around these 1 hour blocks that, Microsoft told us we should fill the entire hour with a meeting. And so when you say work-life integration, I immediately think of very practical things like this. Like part of what made me want to leave that environment and start a company was I want to redefine how we do our time. And it was the first thing that I did is we redefined how we approach the calendar. So now we say, what's the most important in your work, in your life? We put blocks of that first on the calendar and everything else has to go around that. And I remember it being such a breath of fresh air because I definitely have like a creative thread and I like doing, strategic and creative work, but you need big chunks of time. It's like, I always think about musicians. They have to spend whole days and weeks in the studio to be able to create something valuable. But in the corporate back-to-back meeting life, I had to try and squeeze like 20 minutes in between meetings to get some huge strategic thing done. And so when you ask that question, that's what comes to my head is, okay, so what if you actually created your calendar around what matters most in your personal life and in your work? Now we're talking about integrating the two versus, trying to balance them.
Totally. Yes. Thank you for sharing in that. And I think there's so much more to unpack that will be coming with how to do that in these upcoming episodes. And I'm excited for it. When it comes to the word intention, because, I asked you, grow the life you want. And, a lot of what you just said was all about this intention. And it's like, there's something that I'm an Eminem fan and, we got
Yes.
one shot, right? And I always like to remind myself, it's like, I look at my day and that calendar that's all stacked up and all these, and it's like, okay, hold on. I got one shot. I get this one day. I get this one life. And man, it's going fast. Like talk more about when you say intention, like what does that mean to you and how do you live that out?
Yeah. Oh my gosh, we need hours, Nikki.
I know. This is just a teaser. That's why we're going to be doing a series, right?
I know, we do have hours. Okay, so let me try to be brief with my thought on that. I think that when it comes to life and leadership, I think the problem is no one taught us how to do these things. So like me, I went to engineering school. I studied for years and years and like all the way up to calculus 4, and I know how to do these crazy equations, but I still don't know how to do my taxes, how to have a good marriage, how to lead people and teams, how to do like work productively. So I just think we never learned how. And so no wonder everyone's burning out. No wonder everyone's unfulfilled in their work. No wonder teams aren't producing the results they want because we're so busy doing all the things, but we never step back and learn how to do those things. So that's kind of the passion behind Grow the Life You Want and the Roots Up approach is let's step back and let's talk about how to lead, how to live in very practical ways, but in ways that's painting a fuller picture. So if you think about it in leadership, and I'm curious your take on this, Nikki, but I'm always blown away by how many people they're promoted up for being good at their job function. Then one day they wake up and they're leading a bunch of people. And it's like, I never learned how to do this. I don't know how to do this. Now it's actually my core job description, but I don't know how. So I still hide in just doing like the little tasks I know how and being in the weeds, which actually squashes your team from doing what they want to do and being fulfilled in their work. So it's this weird dynamic where in companies that we work with, this is often the starting point. all right, so we actually got to talk about how do you lead people? Like, we never learned how. So first, let's all get comfortable. I mean, there are C-suite executives in some of the biggest companies in the world who still never learned how to do this stuff. It blows my mind. And so we're like, okay, let's all just like take a breath, realize we're all in the same boat. We never learned how, so let's learn how now. And then let's move from there. And I think it's the same that way in leadership in life of, okay, our default is to be reactive. We've got, a million marketing messages coming at us every day, a million to-dos and emails. The very normal thing to do is to just react to all that and then be tired and go to bed, and then wake up and react to it all again and then go to bed. And so, yeah, I mean, my mission in life is, okay, let's get intentional. Let's flip that script. And what would it look like? What would happen in your life and in your company if you stopped just reacting and you got intentional and said, what matters? And then let's start from that foot and design a path forward. And it's just amazing what happens when people make that tiny flip. But it does kind of start as a mindset shift.
Yeah. Yeah. I love the concept of start with the end in mind and get really clear on what that is. I feel like we overlook that many times. It's just like we're just going, right? Like we just go and just start doing, which also brings me back to when you're sharing such a powerful concept here around we have to spend time learning how to do the things. You probably are familiar with be, do, have, give, or some concept of that, right? And so much of the being us as our individual self and how much we have to do to work on ourselves to, so much of leadership is how you handle challenges, right? Like people, we're complex and like how we handle that. It's so much of who we be and what we've done to work on ourselves. And I think just what you're sharing is so much gets overlooked. We get the playbook of here's how you go run a meeting. Yeah, but not all the things about like what's going to come up that doesn't go as planned, which is life, right? And I think that's just, yeah, that being versus doing is kind of, to me, what you're saying there.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's such a great point. And you notice when you talk to great leaders or get to hear their story, there's way more of what you're talking about that was part of their journey that no one knows about because that's behind the scenes. But that's actually what they would point to as the part that, got them where they are or made them, successful where they are.
Yeah. But the hard part about that is sitting in it and working through it versus, overlooking. And that's like the coaching piece is the going deep to work on that. Cause if not, it's just going to resurface. Like you hear this and we were talking about, the whole life wheel and you said something about marriage and whatever. And it's like, there are statistics out there that say, your first marriage, if you don't work on whatever, if that marriage didn't work, you're going to attract the same thing. It's going to just keep, and it does. And so same thing with us as leaders, same thing in every category of the life wheel. If we don't go back and work on the things that build that foundation and do the hard stuff, which is what most people don't want to do, right? We're never going to be able to do the doing and the having and being able to be an abundant giver to the world. So that's why coaching, right?
Yeah, exactly. And what's so funny to me is being in this and seeing the journey that people go through. It sounds so big and elusive or either scary or impossible, or I just don't even have time to think about that. But everyone who enters into the coaching process, it's the exact opposite. It's like, oh, there's just this little step I need to take here. It's, this is actually clear now. And so I think to your point, that's what happens when you shift to being intentional. You realize, it's not actually so big and scary and unclear, but you do have to take that step to make the shift. And I mean, I think that was so much of my story too. Like I grew up wanting to know what I want to be when I grow up, and I had no idea. And so, I go to college, go to engineering school. I'm in engineering. Still something's not right. But I actually had a really toxic company culture experience. And that's what started opening my eyes to my passion for leadership and for culture. I realized, oh my gosh, this is actually the stuff that makes the biggest difference. Because this leader he was only focused on the efficiency. He was literally a mad scientist. And so he was treating us like robots. Meanwhile, he doesn't realize it's ruining all of our lives. Like the effect is trickling into, our marriages, our friendships, our health. And he hadn't done any of that inner work. So I'm getting all of this, whoa, this is actually the stuff I'm passionate about. Fast forward, we moved to a different state. I'm working at like a big Fortune 500 company and got the chance to lead a culture transformation in the company. And so suddenly I get to kind of explore this area I'm passionate about and realize this is what I want to do. I've always wanted to start a company, but this is the stuff I want to do because, to your point, this is what makes the biggest difference. And that was just kind of an interesting, eye-opening experience to see, oh, there's actually this whole realm of working on yourself and your leadership and your culture that's the invisible part that actually makes the biggest difference tangibly.
Yes. Oh, yes. And this roots up concept, we were talking earlier. I said, I love the start with the end in mind thing. And I think there's something I can't wait to dig in and learn about roots up, right? Because there's, foundation and, working towards intentional things, but I want to hear it from you. So roots up, like what inspired this concept? How'd you get the name? And like, what are those key components of roots up?
Yeah. Well, okay. So first of all, when I was in that corporate setting and I was hiring people like me in companies like Greenhouse, what I was really frustrated with was how often we would do something and there's like all this hype and people are excited about some new idea or they learn something. It's like a TED talk and then nothing changes. And Monday it's just back to old habits. And maybe the engineer in me just wasn't okay with that. I was like, no, this doesn't cut it. Like we actually have to make change that sticks. And so I kind of committed then, and this has been the thread of Greenhouse all along, is what's different about us is we're not just talking about stuff like in a book that sounds good on paper, but it doesn't work in real life. We want to build something that works in real life, and real life is often dictated by the busyness. So when you talk about leadership stuff, my first filter is, okay, it has to work in a busy life. It can't be complicated. It can't be a million steps that you're never going to remember or do. It's got to fit real life, which is super busy more than ever. So the idea of the roots up approach is really simple. Like you want to grow your team, your company, your results, but without the roots, you can't grow. So just like any tree or any plant, you got to have the roots. But the roots are like the invisible part below the surface. So this is the theme we're talking about with intentionality. You got to plant the right roots and then you can grow. And so really it has three parts, the roots up approach. There's the vision at the top. This is like, what is the life you want to grow? What is the team you want to grow? Let's define that. That goes down to intention, which is more like the goals and initiatives. What are the things that we do that we want to take action on to build that vision and bring it to life? And below intention is the roots. These are the rhythms and the skills and the things that are going to make it happen in the day-to-day and in the week-to-week and in the busyness. And what happens is often as leaders and organizations, we have so much pressure to get results that we're focused all on the work. Like, let's push harder, let's try harder, let's do better. And that doesn't work. Like, I don't know about you. I mean, I've always felt this with exercise and fitness. I'm like, I always struggled to go to the gym. And when I did finally get there, I would like beat myself up. I'm like, oh, I got to just like crush it and try to get the most out of this. And then I'm miserable because I'm like, this is not fun. And then I never want to go. And the cycle just like goes down the toilet,
Totally. I mean, just your gym example there. It's like at one point in my life, I found a type of exercise that was very challenging and that I enjoyed. Pilates. Loved it so much that I went and bought a reformer. And I was like, everything else, it would be this like struggle. I would make up every excuse to go. And then I'm in this spiraling cycle of like, I am, beating myself up, like you said. But then it's like, you have to find that thing for you. And it's like, someone else could absolutely hate a reformer and Pilates, right? But they love CrossFit, which I tried CrossFit and I hated it.
Yeah.
And so it's so much about figuring out what that is for you. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I know my experience was similar. So it's like, okay, now that you found the thing you actually enjoy, you're able to do it and have consistency, and then the results come on their own. It's not you trying harder and beating yourself up more that makes the difference. It's actually like for you, that root thing was Pilates. Okay, this works for me and it's a rhythm, and now I naturally get the results that I wanted. So it's the same with organizations. We got to get the right roots planted so that the results come naturally, because what you have is you have great people who already have innate talents and strengths and abilities and passions. It's just that you're not tapping into those. So the name greenhouse came from, I had this summer gig one time at this big industrial greenhouse. And it just blew me away. I didn't think about it till years later, but I was like, we never touch the plants. Like you plant the seeds, and then the whole time, all the work we're doing is like adjusting the environment. So making sure it has the right, temperature and sun and humidity and water. The seed already had the potential in it to like grow and be an awesome thing. We just had to create the environment to let it do its thing. And so it's the same with an organization. It's not about pushing harder for results. It's about creating the environment where those seeds, those people can do their best work. And that's the root stuff.
So good. So good. I am thrilled to be able to unpack so much because I feel like it's like just with vision, right? Let alone like this whole like roots up approach of like the being, the person we are inside. It's like there's so many components. And I think the thing that I've seen with greenhouse coaching is how do we make it simple so that it's really applicable and you're going to do it? But the other part is not forcing. It's like aligned to who you are. It's like force versus flow. And I'm always looking to be in flow. I don't know about you. Flow state is what I'm going for.
Yeah. Ooh, that's nice. You better coin that or I'm going to steal it. No, I love that. That's exactly right. Because otherwise work is going to be a drag, not fulfilling. And we all want fulfilling work. I mean, what's so amazing to me about this post-pandemic, like new world we're in is we are redefining what work even is. And it's built around the idea, no one's saying this in the headlines, but this is what's happening. It's built around the idea that people actually want to enjoy work. They want meaningful work, and that's what they're looking for. And now because we have options, you can start a business in your living room. You can change companies every day if you want. Like now that we have options, people are not putting up with unfulfilling work. They're going to keep looking for where they enjoy it. And that's, if you're a leader that wants to future-proof your organization, like here's the way. It's what you said, like, let's make it both enjoyable and productive. But I think what we find in working with teams is the best high performing teams come out of being fulfilled and enjoying the work.
Absolutely. And why not go for that? If that's a possibility, why not be pursuing that versus, man, everyone just feels like they're pushing up a hill and it is just this struggle. And it's like, then you look at other people, all of us could think right now of a person that it just feels like they are just meant for that. I mean, they just shine in that role. They are just enjoying the work. Everyone has that opportunity. Every single person, right? It's figuring out that fit. Just like for me, Pilates, right? If I'm at CrossFit, I hate my life. I'm like saying things out of my mouth that I wish didn't come out of my mouth, right? Like because it's not aligned. So much of that foundational effort, building those key roots. I love that so much. So I know this is big. This is like our intro episode. There's tons coming.
I know. I'm like holding back. So I want to like dive into all this so bad.
I know. Give us just a little bit more about, what to expect with some of the content that we're going to be sharing in these episodes. Maybe just digging into like each kind of component area, and let's hone into really like this leadership content that's coming.
So how about a couple practical teasers then? Because yes, this can be big, heady stuff. And it's like, but where do I start is usually a leader's first question. So, leaders will come to us. I have a meeting right after this with somebody who, their company just got bought and they're restructuring. And it's like, okay, brand new canvas, right? All the way up to Fortune 100, like they're already going and flowing and they just want to level up as a team. So in any of those cases, you have these root components that are the same across the board. There are foundational roots everyone needs, and then there are custom ones to you. So some examples of foundational ones are, we've already touched on meetings, the idea of meeting modes. This is like most of work consists of meetings, but most meetings, they suck. They aren't run well, and they're not something we enjoy. They're something we dread and we make jokes about on Instagram. So what if meetings were actually run well, and what if they were fun, and what if they were effective? There are very simple ways to make this shift that are, again, not having to add to your calendar. It's just shifting what you are already doing in the time you already have allocated. So meeting modes is one example of a key root. Another example is the idea of, we call it dynamic delegation. So again, leaders never learned how to delegate. It's like, I had a graduation to say, all right, now you're becoming an adult and getting a job. And then I had a wedding. It's like, all right, now you're married. But no one ever said, okay, Steve, now you're a people leader. So here's some tools you need. Here's how to delegate. I just had to stumble through and fail like 1.5 million times. And so part of what we've done is boiled the ocean. Like, what is it about delegation that makes it really work, that's doable in a busy schedule? Well, turns out there's one little thing no one talks about in the books, and it's called delegate the thinking. This is like a tiny trick that makes the world of difference. Because you know how it is, leaders, we don't want to delegate because it's like, it's easier to do it myself. And they're just going to do it wrong. And then on the receiving end, associates and employees, they're like, I'm afraid I'll get it wrong. They procrastinate, they hesitate. And all of this ends up in a disaster that we now have to fix. So instead, this little delegate the thinking, we'll talk about it in an episode, exactly how to do it. This is a tiny tweak that makes the world of difference for people being empowered to do their best work. You know, I could go on and on. Like, another example is one-on-ones. How many of us just either don't have them or dread them? And it's because they turn into status updates. Like, we don't know what to talk about. And leader after leader after leader we work with, we just give them this little template. Do this thing every time in your one-on-ones, and people love it, and they grow and develop as professionals, which they love. You know, that's the number one thing employees want these days, is to be invested in and grow. But also the leader loves it because now they're able to give feedback, and things don't have to build until it's a huge problem. So you can see how, like, why we call them roots, because they're these tiny, like, invisible things that actually make the world of difference above the surface. And I'm so passionate about them because no one taught us how. So, like, let's dig in. You know?
Yeah. Yeah. And what comes to mind for me, one of my favorite books of all time is Atomic Habits. And it's this compilation of, learning these habits. So when you were just sharing those 3 examples of like key things we'll be talking about in these episodes, it's like, wow, wouldn't it be nice to never at the end of a meeting or during a meeting be like, why is this a meeting? Why are we here? Yes, yes. You're like, we all want that. It happens way too often. And then I learned something on the delegation tip. I learned a game-changing remark from a executive search for executive assistants. They specialize in executive assistants. And she said, one of the greatest things that we've learned is teaching leaders how to delegate and helping them reframe it that it is to drive engagement, because delegation means trust. I trust you, and I want to watch you grow into something that I used to do as a leader. I'm giving this to you because I trust you, and it is an engagement strategy. And I mean, ever since, obviously, I'm sharing it right now. It's stuck with me.
Yeah. Well, in that episode, we need to dive into what you just said, because that is a huge, huge thing right there. And yeah, the problem is then a leader learns that, and they jump a bunch of steps, and they just go, okay, I just trust you. Here you go, Nikki, like, go, I trust you. And then that's also a disaster because they don't have the safety net they need. It's like, but it's it's a very simple fix. We never have learned it. Okay, so one time we were working with this top leadership team at one of the biggest companies in the country. They said, okay, but let's get to like the meatier stuff. You know, like what Brene Brown's talking about in Simon Sinek and like that stuff. And although I love that stuff, I said, let me correct you there, because actually you don't even do the basics well. So jumping to those big, big concepts, it's not worth it. It's still going to fail in the execution of it all because you're not even doing your one-on-ones and your meetings and this like day-to-day stuff effectively. And I think that's, for me, the tension of like, yes, I also love all of those big heady topics, but we got to get the roots right first.
Yep. Same concept as a lot of us that see, the photo of the iceberg. And it's like, this is all you see is what's up top. And that's the same concept we're talking about with roots up. But there's so much below, and we can't go to right below the surface, right? Because the roots are really deep. And so we have so much to unpack, and you and I could talk forever. We'll have lots more coming. Before we move over to our lightning round, though, I wanted to make sure that you mentioned, you had told me something about a growth map opportunity. I don't know if I'm getting it right on the term there. Can you tell me about what we had shared? Because that was like a step to take to kind of get things started? If anybody was like, okay, you're speaking to my soul here. What is that?
No, I love it. So, okay, if you think about this roots up, and we'll share the diagram with people too, but it starts with planting those roots, and then it grows. You can grow the team and the company and the life that you want. But the process actually works in reverse. So you want to start with defining the vision. What is the team you want? Let's define what that looks like. That's a qualitative exercise. And so that's crafting a vision. Most leaders don't have it. Most leaders have mission and they don't even know what vision is. So again, like, no shame. We're all in this boat together, but let's create a vision. Then out of that, you pull your goals. So you're not just creating goals at the end of the year out of thin air or because XYZ company did these things. They come directly out of the vision so that you are building that vision. Then we can identify the right routes to get in place. And so the growth map is our exercise of, let's talk through what is your vision and identify the right routes and then put them in a plan. So you've got your roadmap, you have your playbook. The growth map is actually your playbook for how do I build this culture and get us as a team leveled up. And so that's actually the first step that we do with leaders and with teams. But I think what's helpful is to recognize you have to actually take a step back for a second to think about this. And if it's helpful, we can actually provide the quiz for people where they can take the quick quiz and see, like, what is my kind of V1 growth map? And then if you want to dive in and really custom tailor that for your situation, that's what we do when we meet with leaders for the first time.
Can I sign David and myself up because we're about to do our 2025 like personal planning? We do the whole life wheel thing. And I'm like, this would fit in really cool. And so I don't know if I can be one of your guinea pigs there from Gut Plus Science right away, but I would love to do that. And I'll sign David up too.
And we should definitely do that.
Yeah.
Yes.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. We'll link out information there. I want to head over to our lightning round. And this is just our really, really quick, fast, non-prepped kind of one-off things to get to know Steve Perkins more on a personal side and like remember things like, oh, really? Like, wow, I'll always remember him for that. And I think we'll pick out some of those. Okay. So Steve, first thing, we always ask your favorite book of all time or favorite recent read. You get to pick one book.
Easy. It's called Multipliers, and it's by Liz Wiseman and Greg McKeown. Greg also had a more popular, more well-known one called Essentialism is what he's known for. I love that book as well. But Multipliers, it's one of those, like, it struck a chord. It was like, oh, that's who I want to be. Everything they talked about is like, it was kind of like Lorne Michaels from SNL, like somebody who really unlocks, like identifies people with potential and really like launches them into their thing.
Yeah. Oh, I love it. Putting it on my list. I did read Essentialism and I really like that book. Okay. So I heard we might now think of you every time we go to grab a Ziploc for our leftovers. What's up with that?
Yeah. So little known fact, I had a brief internship at Ziploc, which is part of SC Johnson, a family company. And it was so fun because growing up, I didn't know what I wanted to be, but I was like, I want to be an inventor. I didn't think that was a thing, but like at Ziploc, I actually worked for their inventor. And his name was Bob, and he was the inventor for like everything you see on their commercials. And so I got to kind of apprentice under him and invent stuff. And yeah, I have a couple patents with Ziploc for things that you see at the grocery store.
Oh my gosh. I love that. I love that so much. The things that don't come up in everyday conversation.
I know. I feel like it's cool. But my daughter, who's 9, like, she just rolls her eyes. If we're ever at the grocery store, I make sure to point out, like, we'll detour to go down that aisle. I'm like, yeah, like, Daddy invented that. She's like, wow, so cool. Moving on.
Give her a few years, then she'll be telling her friends. It might take till 20, actually, from some experience. So, okay, so we're going to act as if I am handing over a check to book your bucket list trip.
Ooh.
You have one place that you get to go. Where are you going?
Okay. So I think it's got to be like snowboarding in the Alps, but the type of like the heliskiing type where they drop you off on, fresh powder no one's ever touched, like the stuff you see in the movies. I probably wouldn't be able to do it, but that to me is like a dream. But I felt tension for a sec there because I'm like, oh, but then there's also the warm side of like a beach So I've always wanted to go to the coast of Spain. I've never been there.
Hey, you know what? I didn't say that there was a limit on, the vastness of
Oh,
this
okay.
trip, right? And this just leans into who you guys are at Greenhouse Coaching, right? The whole life, right? Like we're going to maximize this. We are going for a vision. Why not do both? So great inspiration. I don't even think you know what you did there, but it's like, well, wait, but I want both of the, and you can. And you can. Now let's just work towards that check that I could hand over to you. We got to get that part.
We got to get those rates of like the money
The
and the
actual
time.
gifted check. And we'll work on one for me too. And I'll have to figure out my gift.
But see, that's the integrate. Yes. But Nikki, this is our integrated approach is like, if I can have some work there, then there's a reason to go.
That's right. If any Gut Plus Science listeners are sitting listening from anywhere close to the Alps right now and would love for us to come out, we will do a life wheel, growth map, all the things that you want free.
Free work.
It's free. Yes.
Free.
Steve, before we go, can you share the best way if someone wants to connect with you? They have a question, a thought, whatever. They want to connect with you directly. We will also be linking in all the ways to connect with Greenhouse, but you directly, what's the best way?
Probably LinkedIn. Yeah, I'm there. Steve Perkins. Greenhouse Coaching also has a page, but my page is the main one. And connect with me there. Also, our website, greenhousecoaching.co, is a good way to. There's a contact form, but you can also see all the things that we do there. I would say LinkedIn is a good place to start.
Steve Perkins, thank you so much for joining today and breaking down this concept of roots up. It's a way of living. It is growing the life we want and taking that stance that the team at Greenhouse lives out, this mantra of grow the life I want. And what that really breaks down to into these, key concepts that I'll call truth you can act on today is, number one, building our roots is often overlooked. Think about how many times in life we aren't taught in school in our 12 or 16 or 20 years of school how to lead ourselves, like self-reflection, connection with others, like how to truly connect with another human, emotional intelligence, embracing risk, navigating the hard days, all of these things that are these roots-based efforts, the being side of who we are at that underneath the surface foundation that makes up us as a human. And that allows us to then build on these fabulous things that allow us to have this vision. That's my number 2 on the truth you can act on, is this clarity of vision for our life to grow the life we want. Number 1 was creating the roots that are so strong. We know who we are. We know why we're here. We've got those basic understandings of how to move forward. And now, number 2, we have a vision for our life, and it is robust and it is clear, and we share it with others and how to do that really well. And number 3 is intention and having the building blocks, the habits that become our toolbox for our go-to efforts that allow us to flow in life rather than force. And we've got to have the roots strong and the vision clear, and then be able to practice these intentions not just every day, but really in the moment. And they become habits to live out. So this fast 30-minute episode was just a little piece of gold to be able to get a concept and an understanding of where we want to go in this partnership with Steve Perkins and the team at Greenhouse Coaching. And I'm so excited about it. Hope you enjoyed today's episode. And I encourage you to go reach out to Steve, reach out to the team at Greenhouse, and come along for the journey of so much great content that's coming on Gut Plus Science. See you next time. We just left the world a little bit better. Now, go do something with it.